The bullying ended, but Derek's social life never improved. How could he possibly make any friends when his family was such an epic disaster? He hid the bruises he got from his father with long sleeves, and soon enough he was out of plausible excuses to explain the continuous rotation of black eyes. Derek shouldn't have worried, though. No one at school actually cared about the abuse. Caring would have been too much effort. His classmates and teachers simply pretended not to notice how beat up he was. Derek liked to pretend their apathy was due to his own skills as a liar, but deep in his heart he felt bitter and hateful. No one cared about him. No one ever would. Except Carl. Life was painful but manageable so long as Derek had his little brother. Carl was his family, sole friend, and confidant. He was Derek's whole world. But soon enough, adolescence hit in full force, and Derek started having crushes on girls. First love was supposed to be a wonderful thing in a person's life, but not for Derek. Once again, he felt utterly helpless. He couldn't get close to anyone he liked because he knew he couldn't bring anyone home to hang out or meet his parents. He couldn't open up. He couldn't ask a girl to the movies or to hang out after school. Derek was tormented by the cruel futility of his life. Often he'd lie awake at night demanding an answer from God himself. Why couldn't Derek know love or happiness? Why did other people get to enjoy what was only an impossible dream for him? Derek's rage started increasing. He had trouble sleeping at night, thinking about all the couples in the world, thinking how lovey-dovey they were, and how he'd never get to know what that felt like. Derek knew he was different. His fatal flaw wasn't being shy or having a bad case of acne. No doctor could cure his affliction. His disease was a life sentence. It had a name and a surname. Ezio Esposito, his trash bag of a father. Derek started concocting plans to get rid of his father, even if that meant killing the bastard. At night, he would lie awake and devise elaborate scenarios that often involved prolonged torture. He would make Ezio suffer like Derek had for all these years. But when morning came, Derek would always realize it was wishful thinking. Just a dumb plan. Derek was angry, but he wasn't ruthless enough to murder his own father. He remained an angry teenager, nothing more. He didn't have the means to carry out his plans anyway. At least, he didn't have the means to do it and not get caught. Kill Ezio? Sure. And what then? Live a whole life racked with guilt? Run away from home to avoid being arrested? Run away with what money? Killing Ezio would mean abandoning Carl and destroying any possible chance of future happiness. So every morning, Derek would swallow his homicidal plan along with his breakfast and move on. His only real prospect for a better life was to cram like a madman, get a scholarship, and get out of this hell as fast as possible. Time passed quickly, and soon it was the summer before Derek's freshman year of high school. Despite the hot weather, his heart was cold as ice. Derek had finally hit his growth spurt. Combined with his martial arts training and muscle development, he now looked lean and mean. Ezio became aware that his elder son was a real threat now. Ezio was a bully, but he was a smart and cowardly one. The old man took to avoiding Derek as much as possible, making Carl the new favorite target for abuse. Derek tried standing up for his brother, but it was no use. Ezio bought a nightstick from the local army surplus and beat Carl harder than ever. "What the hell are you doing?" Derek yelled, trying to wrestle the stick away from his louse of a father. Ezio struck him across the face with the nightstick, rattling Derek's brain. "You boys need to learn some damn respect. I'll kill you if you don't shape up," Ezio snarled. Derek had been helpless to get it to stop. Ezio might have beaten Carl to death if the ruckus hadn't alarmed the neighbors. Derek had looked after Carl that night. realizing that if he wasn't prepared to kill Ezio, he couldn't stand up to him. It would make everything worse. So whenever Ezio threw one of his tantrums, Derek had to stand back and watch his brother getting beaten. He comforted Carl and helped ease the swelling, but he was useless. Derek would sit in bed at night and think about how he was going to get them out of this. He knew one thing for certain. If things didn't change soon, either Ezio was going to die or Derek was. Then one morning, Ezio got a phone call from one of his old army buddies. The man worked for a company that was hiring with an eye toward quick promotion. If Ezio landed this job, he might start climbing the corporate ladder for real. "Finally, my ship's coming in," he told his sons. Derek and Carl only nodded and ate quietly. He didn't really want to hear them speak. Ezio went and put on his best suit despite the heat. He and Derek prepared his briefcase and laptop. "You need to show up prepared in this world," Ezio told Derek. "You should learn from my example. Don't be a bum your whole life." "Okay," Derek said, even though Ezio was the biggest bum he knew. Ezio was in a real hurry. He ran to the elevator, pushing the button like a madman, but the light remained red. Someone on the top floor was taking a long time getting into the car. Cursing the condo, the building manager, and his own rotten luck, Ezio rushed for the stairs. Derek stood in their doorway and watched his father. And that's when Derek noticed how the hallway floor reflected the light in odd ways. The floor looked wet. Derek realized that the janitor had just washed the hallway, but had forgotten to put up the wet floor sign. That was dangerous. Someone could slip and really hurt themselves. Even die. Derek smiled. Yes, at last. It happened all in an instant. Ezio was just starting down the stairs when his foot slipped. Derek could have warned him. He could have rushed over to grab his father. But instead, he stayed put and watched nature run its course. Ezio tumbled down the stairs, going down several flights as he screamed. At the bottom of the steps, his body was a broken mess, all his limbs bent at unnatural angles. Derek grabbed his phone and took several photos to prove that the floor was wet and there was no warning sign. Already, he planned on hiring the best shark law firm he could find and suing the building management firm. Only then did he carefully walk down the stairs to confirm Ezio's death. His father lay there, incapable of speech, his eyes fixated on Derek. He was silently begging for help. Derek grinned. "Haven't I learned from your example, old man? You're the one who said I should never delegate. If you want something done right, do it yourself. Wasn't that how it went? Your phone's in your pocket. Take it out and call 911. I'm a useless dumbass after all. I don't want to screw up calling for help, Daddy." Ezio's eyes were full of shock and hate. Then his head went limp, his gaze blank. Derek suppressed gleeful laughter. Instead, adopted his best terrified son expression and started shouting for help. When the ambulance arrived, he made sure to squeeze out a few tears. They comforted him, believing he'd done everything he could to save his father. Bunch of idiots. As always, Derek's mother was too obsessed with her problems and feelings to bother looking for a lawyer to manage their lawsuit. She left everything in Derek's hands. That's how he was able to kill 3 birds with 1 stone. After careful research, he contacted and hired the best lawyer they could afford. Derek also arranged to be the client instead of his mother. Mr. Thompson looked surprised to be dealing with a young teenager. "You're sure your mother can't help you out, son?" "My mother hasn't lifted a finger for me since the day I was born. I want her looked after, since she gave me life and all. But I don't want to see her again when this is over." He told Mr. Thompson everything. Derek spoke about his father's accident, the abuse the boys had suffered over the years, and the need to split the settlement money 3 ways. One portion would go to their mother, one to Derek, one to Carl. Both kids were very firm on one special point. They wanted the lawyer to start the process to get them emancipated. With the money from the settlement and Ezio's life insurance policy, they had enough to be self-sufficient until Derek grew up. What followed was the happiest period in their life. Before long, they were emancipated minors with cash in their pockets. They moved away from their mother's place and never saw her again. Derek doubted she even noticed they were gone. They used their portion of the money to settle up and make proper plans for the future. Over the following years, bullies weren't a problem. Derek and Carl both became martial artists and had each other's backs. Having their own place allowed them to experience having friends and girlfriends over. Their domestic nightmare was finally a thing of the past. They suffered many disappointments, though. Too many so-called friends only wanted to use their parent-free house as a party den. They also struggled with being normal teens. While their peers only wanted to party and skip class, the boys focused on studying and saving as much as possible. Derek and Carl would work part-time jobs during holidays and vacations to keep themselves afloat. They weren't poor, but not rich either. They knew they had to save as much as possible for a rainy day, but they had a good life. Derek got a scholarship and obtained a bachelor degree in chemistry, soon followed by a master's in biochemistry. Carl did well too. He got his engineering degree, was studying for his master's, and already had a fiancée. Despite being really happy for his little brother, seeing Carl in love was a painful thorn in Derek's side. He had always been the more socially inept of the two. He'd never managed to get into a stable relationship, not even in college. Derek had problems talking to girls. The problem lay in his inability to trust. He had many crushes, but never fell in love. At the beginning, he blamed bad luck, or thought the girls shallow. After finding and losing more than one good girl, he blamed his past. But Carl's own success in love made Derek blame himself. Carl had suffered the same things, but he'd come out of it stronger and purer than Derek. Derek was just too scared of being hurt again. That fear was one enemy he could just never beat up. Derek accepted a decent job working the night shift at a big chemical company. Carl had told him that he wanted to marry his fiancée as soon as he got his master's. That gave Derek 2 years to save enough money to give his little brother a decent wedding. Derek didn't like his job, but it was a way to start his career. Also, it was well paid, and he resolved to use the company insurance to seek psychological counseling. He knew he had problems and wanted to work on them. Derek consulted several doctors before finding someone he felt was a good fit. After several months, he was finally starting to make progress. But alas, such happiness could not last. It was a Friday evening, and Derek was